I guess it shouldn't come as any surprise that the messaging out of the Biden White House this Yuletide has been so gloomy and depressing so far, where you normally hear things like, the President and First Lady would like to pass along their warmest wishes for a Merry Christmas and a blessed Hanukkah and a dope-ass Kwanzaa and a whatever it is the Muslims do. But that's been replaced this year by President Biden wants to remind all you filthy, unvaxxed, dog-faced pony soldiers that you can look forward to a winter of severe disease and illness and death if you don't get the shot. That's right, I said death. A long, slow, agonizing death. A death you wouldn't wish on a Nazi war criminal. And good job overrunning the hospital, you assholes. Have fun dying in the hallway, unattended and unloved, out there at Flyover General Hospital. The president grieves your loss. No, really, he does. So Merry Christmas, you white supremacist, anti-vaxxer, insurrectionist sons of bitches. The president and Dr. First Lady Jill Biden wish you a swift and much-deserved death. It's strange to see the president striking such a bitter tone this Christmas time. I mean, he had a pretty good year. I mean, except for when he crashed the economy and botched the exit from Afghanistan and made the pandemic worse and had bathroom accidents in the presence of various crowned and mitred heads of Europe. Remember how happy he was last year at this time? He had finally won the presidency on his 37th try, despite running the first basement campaign since McKinley back all the way in 1896. And though it took them a good solid 5 days, the news media and the big tech oligarchs eventually decided, okay, yeah, I guess let's go ahead and declare this guy the winner of the presidency. We've come this far, might as well see the plan through to the end, I guess. But set aside just for a moment the fact that Joe Biden has spent a year governing like Joe Biden, just screwing every pooch a president can screw, and consider how advantageous a situation he was about to step into when he was the president-elect. Normally, when you're replacing a one-term president, things are really bad, and that's why they threw the other guy out, but this time it wasn't that way. To the extent that the country had been damaged economically by misguided measures taken in response to the Chinese flu virus from China, that damage was done by and large by woke Democrat governors. At the federal level, Joe Biden entered the presidency in the best of all possible positions. All he had to do was absolutely nothing. And things would have just got better on their own, and he would have looked like a good president. He got 3 vaccines tossed in his lap, ready to roll out. He got handed a border that was more or less secure, getting more secure by the day. He got handed a country that was energy independent and had no need of any oil from OPEC. Joe Biden, the same senator who spent 30 plus years paying lip service to energy independence, saying, oh yeah, wouldn't it be great if we had no need of Middle Eastern oil and we could avoid all those entanglements? And on his first day, as his first order of business, he goes straight to work, dismantling that same energy independence that he used to speak so fondly about. And, I would like to be reassured by the fact that his approval numbers are in a perpetual state of free fall, but that doesn't change the fact that scores of millions of Americans thought it would be a good idea to vote for this half-dead buffoon for the most important job in the whole wide world. And they weren't all Civil War veterans. Some were actual, lawful, registered voters who are currently alive. Allegedly. But you know what the most scandalous thing is about this first Biden White House Christmas? The fact that they did not hang up a stocking for the stripper grandbaby from Arkansas. When you're the first president with a crackhead son and a stripper grandbaby, I expect you to lean into that historical responsibility, Mr. President. And I would have been willing to give bonus points if you hung up a little stocking that actually said stripper grandbaby on it. But no. They pointedly refused to hang a stocking for poor little stripper grandbaby, and when a reporter, probably from Fox News I imagine, asked why there were stockings hung by the chimney with care for all of the Biden grandpersons except for stripper grandbaby, they took everybody else's stockings down. So good job, Fox News. You got Christmas canceled for all of the Biden non-stripper grandkids, and they never hurt anybody. So no wonder that homeless guy burned your tree down, because you had it coming, you bunch of Scrooges. From atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where our halls will buckle if we deck them with any more boughs of holly. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And poor little stripper grandbaby Biden isn't the only man with problems this Christmas, because his granddaddy, President Poopy McSharts-a-lot, he's got about all the problems he can handle. Hey, by the way, are you the same Joe Biden who said every COVID death is 100% the fault of the president? Sorry, I'm asking for a friend. I say it has to be a different Joe Biden because nobody could say such a stupid-ass thing and actually become the president. But since I have you here, sir, are you also the same Joe Biden who said you were going to shut down the virus and not the country? Because I was just wondering how that all worked out. It's almost like you were too accustomed to running for president and never winning, so you got used to being able to just say any old crap you felt like saying out on the campaign trail, and nobody ever had occasion to call you out on it later. So, in case you haven't heard yet, Build Back Better is now Build Back Deader, which is apropos when your presidency is nicknamed Weekend at Biden's, I suppose. But Joe Manchin didn't fold. It surprised the hell out of me. I was on record as saying I fully expected him to hold out for a few weeks and then promptly fold. But he went on Fox News yesterday, which I would think has to be a calculated decision, to say that he is a hard no. He will not support the bill. There are too many things in it that he can't get behind, so he says, not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent. And how do you suppose the leftist Twitterverse reacted to that bit of news? If you said, well, they probably acted like reasonable, rational adults, then number one, you're wrong, and number two, you've never met the leftist Twitterverse. If, on the other hand, you said, well, they probably yelled and screamed and shrieked and cried like a bunch of crazed toddlers, and then they tried to outdo one another with their displays of performative outrage, then congratulations, Bette Midler salutes you. Bette Midler, who thought the best way of registering her displeasure with Joe Manchin would be to launch just an all-out character assault on the people of West Virginia, which I always sort of wonder how these thought processes go, but I suppose that question is a non-starter when you're living in a world where people publicly blast out for public consumption every single thought that flits across their prefrontal cortex. Let's see. Joe Manchin did a thing I don't like. Where's Joe Manchin from? West Virginia. Yeah, let me think. What are some stereotypes of West Virginia that I can think of? Come on, brain. I've only got 10 seconds here, or else the desire to tweet will have passed, so don't waste my time. This isn't difficult. A man from West Virginia did a thing I don't like, therefore... Okay, all West Virginians are bad, obviously. You're my brain. Stop asking questions. Is it coal miners? No, we can't do coal miners. Let's leave them out, because I once did a cover of that Loretta Lynn song, so that's out. How about poverty? Okay, poverty. That's a good one. Illiteracy. That's good. Let's be sure and mention during our barely comprehensible, drunk, broken English tweet storm that West Virginians can't read so good. That'll show them. Okay, what else? Hey, drugs, that's the ticket. I heard those hillbillies are ODing on something or other all the time, so good job, brain. I think this is going to be a winning tweet. In fact, when this Manchin fellow finds out that he has earned himself an angry tweet from Bette Midler, I bet he reconsiders this whole course of action. And so then it was about 20 minutes before she had to frantically delete the initial anti-West Virginia tweet and launch into an immediate apology tweet storm, because no, of course I didn't mean those things that I stated directly and unequivocally. Stop taking my words out of context. You're committing violence against me. You just don't like strong women. But you see, stuff like that, a world where idiot celebrities can publicly blast out every dumb thing they think, and it only takes 5 seconds to go from ill-advised thought to ill-advised tweet that the whole world has seen now, that is why I could never be an agent. It used to be, back in a sane world with no brain-poisoned social media hate machines in it, that when some idiot celebrity wanted to say some dumbass thing about politics that he just needed the whole world to hear, it wasn't just a simple matter of tapping a magic glowing rectangle a few times and being done with it. You had to call your agent first, and you had to say, agent, there's this stupid thing about politics that I really want to say, and I want the whole world to hear it. And the agent says, okay, client. This is the worst idea you've ever had, but I'm willing to humor you for the time being. We're going to need to arrange a press conference for you to say the stupid thing you want to say, and we'll need some time to notify people, so you're going to have to give me 48 hours to book a venue and notify the press. But see, right there, you've already planted the seed in the idiot celebrity's head by telling him this thing he wants to do is a terrible idea. So now he's got 2 days to sit around thinking, maybe this really is a terrible idea. Maybe this isn't a thing I want to say out loud for worldwide public consumption. In fact, it doesn't sound nearly as good in my head now as it did a few hours ago. Maybe I don't want to call this press conference at all. And to use the example of Bette Midler, if she was living in a pre-Twitter world, if she had to call up her agent and say, "Agent, I am very unhappy with this senator from West Virginia saying he's not going to vote for this $5 trillion spending bill. So what I'd like to do now is tell the entire world that West Virginians are a bunch of poor, retarded smack junkies." Do you think she would ever make it to the press conference? Imagine back in the day how many idiotic utterances from vapid celebrity morons we never had to hear, whose public dissemination was forestalled by the great gift of social media not existing. In fact, I can illustrate the point in 6 words or less, because imagine this. Imagine John and Yoko on Twitter. It's easy if you try, and it's about as alluring as that nude album cover they did. So Joe Biden's legislative agenda, at least in its current bloated form, is now officially dead. And that was his one chance to salvage some sort of signature achievement in his first year in office, if you can even call it that. If a $5 trillion Porkapalooza spending bill can be called a signature achievement. But now that it's dead, you know what they should never be allowed to live down? I'm talking Joe Biden, Lady Ginger McFirebush, Nancy Pelosi, Mayor Pete, the California Cackler, the whole lot of them. Every single person who claimed with a straight face that this $5 trillion spending bill, it really costs nothing because it's all paid for. Anybody who's willing to insult the people's intelligence that brazenly should never be allowed to live that down. If you can spend $5 trillion without actually spending anything, why don't we do that all the time? Why even have budgets? Why even count the dollars? Why have a Treasury Department and a Federal Reserve if you can make money exist just by wishing upon a star? And here's another question. How come we waited so long to win the Cold War when all we had to do was announce that we were raising our military spending to $27.3 quadrillion a year? And then when the Russians said, "This is lie, this is not possible," we could just say, "Think again, comrade, it's already paid for, we're just gonna tax the rich." I wonder why they didn't use that excuse when they were trying to explain away the Afghanistan debacle. Because it seems like it might have come in handy. Well, yeah, okay, sure. We left behind $80 billion worth of weapons and vehicles and equipment. But it's cool. It's all paid for. We're going to tax the rich. So don't sweat it. You worry too much. And that's not the only thing you worry about too much, America. You also worry too much about the great communist Chinese Wuhan Kung Flu coronavirus of 2019. And the nation's most eminent medical healer, Dr. Anthony Fauci, wants you to calm down, take a step back, and maybe start acting a bit more rationally. Because according to Dr. Fauci, if you are absolutely positive beyond any inkling of a shadow of a doubt that your loved ones have all had the vaccine, fully vaccinated, and you're willing to do your due diligence and carefully examine all of their medical records before allowing them entry into your home, then you should feel totally comfortable having guests in your home who are not wearing masks and who aren't social distancing. And hey, if one person in your family is a scofflaw, a science denier, an anti-vaxxer, an insurrectionist, that person can spend the day sitting outside contemplating the error of his ways while the rest of you are all comfy and cozy in the house enjoying a wonderful biosecurity police state Christmas with the full blessings of His Eminence, Dr. Fauci. Peace be upon him. But Dr. Fauci's boss has got bigger problems than all that, which is probably why he's so grumpy this Christmas. Or maybe he's just pissed because the Hallmark Channel canceled the annual Murder, She Wrote Christmas marathon. Who knows? In any event, with the first year of his term not yet in the books, with collapsing approval ratings, rampant inflation, consumer sentiment at historic lows, Joe and his people are going to have to start taking desperate measures if they want to turn this thing around. And when you're talking desperate political measures that are undertaken to prop up a weak, failing regime, one of the options on the table is always to start a war. And while Joe Biden doesn't give two squirts of piss about the United States having a secure southern border, he seems very, very concerned about the integrity of Ukraine's eastern border. He's even been trying to do a bit of saber rattling in Russia's direction in recent weeks, but when the man running your State Department rattling your saber is the erstwhile 90s alternative rock star quivering Tony Blinken, it's difficult to describe anything that guy does as saber rattling. If you handed him a saber, he probably would manage to lacerate himself with it in under 10 seconds. But with all this sudden intrigue regarding Russia and Ukraine, with rumblings about NATO military deployments even, let's take a moment to ask and answer the pertinent questions. Number one, do the U.S. or NATO have any treaty obligations with respect to Ukraine? No, they do not. Number two, do Americans have any reason to care about Ukraine's territorial integrity? No, they don't. 3, should Americans be willing to support any expenditure of blood and treasure on Ukraine's behalf? No, they shouldn't. 4, should Ukraine be a member of NATO? No. Should NATO still exist? No. Ukraine is a small country that sits next door to a world power. There is no version of history where Russia doesn't play a large role in Ukraine's affairs, especially since in the eastern part of the country, most of the people are ethnically Russian and their political allegiance is primarily to Russia. So no economic sanctions are ever going to change the facts on the ground. Ukraine is always going to be, to some extent or other, a Russian satellite state. But is Joe Biden willing to launch a foreign military adventure, whether unilaterally or under the auspices of NATO or the U.S., just because he thinks it's the last best chance to rescue his cratering approval ratings? It sounds like a crazy question to ask. But let's face it, presidents have launched military actions over less. And this particular president, I guarantee you he didn't expect to be sitting here at the end of his first year with his numbers in the mid-30s, falling like a manhole cover. That wasn't supposed to be possible. Not with the entire news media in the tank, not with the big tech oligarchs all personally invested in the enterprise, since this guy is the president they selected, and they pulled out all the stops to drag his half-dead ass across the finish line. And I really don't want NATO whispering in Joe's ear right now, because why does NATO still exist, except to engage in military provocations against Russia? NATO is the successor organization to the Allied Expeditionary Force. It was established for the sole reason of countering a Soviet ground invasion of Western Europe. In a few days, it will be the 30th anniversary of the Soviet Union ceasing to exist. Needless to say, there's not going to be any Soviet invasion of Western Europe in the near future, but we still have NATO, an organization for which war with Russia is its whole reason to exist. And we have a weak, flailing, feckless president who is desperate to do anything that brings him a bit of personal prestige and arrests the downward spiral of his public approval. Russia is not an emergent military threat to the United States or our allies. To the extent that Russia wishes to wield an outsized influence in the smaller countries that surround it, why shouldn't they want that? And why should we begrudge them that desire? It's unavoidable that Russia is always going to have a big influence on events in Ukraine and Belarus and the Baltics and Kazakhstan. It's just as it's unavoidable for the U.S. to have a big influence on Mexico and Canada. But as a military adversary for us or for NATO, Russia's economy is half the size of California's, and they have no inclination to seek a war with us. But there are many of us here in the U.S., too many people, in fact, people who still might have the power to make it happen, who are desirous that we seek a war with them. As far as I'm concerned, if you want to advance the cause of world peace, then disband NATO immediately. Don't reform it, don't remake it, abolish that son of a bitch, because nothing good can come of it at this point. Small order of channel business as we sign off. No Wednesday program this week. I've got a rare hockey night on Wednesday this week, so I think I'm just going to do a Thursday video, which will give me time to whip up 1 or 2 Christmas song parodies for this year, which I know you've all been waiting for excitedly. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Have a pleasant tomorrow. I will see you Thursday. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.